Today's video is sponsored by Native Sons Goods, makers of premium quality guitar, bag, and camera straps, handmade in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Check out their website to order your own custom creation and play in style. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel, and I sure appreciate it.
Hey all, it's Shitpost Friday.
Hello lads and ladies, Brad the Guitarologist here, and it's time for Shitpost Friday! Newcomers to the channel who are confused about what Shitpost Friday is, essentially all it is my way of tossing a bunch of crap in one video and calling it shit and having you guys swallow it.
A recent Twitter poll found that 47% of people hear Yanny, while 53% hear Laurel. Clearly this has created an internet argument that is dividing the nation. Laurel. 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 Or Laurel. Laurel. Laurel.
It's clearly fucking Laurel. It's so fake. I'm going to start a fake controversy. Am I saying fuck you or am I saying have a nice day? Which is it? Because half of the people here have a nice day and half of the people here fuck you. How can that be? As always with Shitpost Friday, I like to begin with the week's news, and we'll begin with this bit of news, which is that Frances Bean Cobain has lost her dad's priceless MTV Unplugged guitar. Essentially, she's getting a divorce from this jackass that she was with. All you young girls, stay away from dudes like this. Look at him. He's even holding his phone wrong. He claims that she gave him this guitar, which if that's true, then shame on you. Why would you give away something like that? Even if it's your husband, don't give it away. You can say, well, there it is. If you ever want to play it, there it is. We're never getting divorced, so what difference does it make? She claims now that she did not give it to him. I'm inclined to believe her just because why would you give a jackass like this such an important piece of musical history? For those of you curious about what the guitar is, it's actually a Martin guitar. If I remember this story correctly, he sent someone out like the day of or the day before or the week before the show. It was running up real close to the show. And I think he sent somebody out or something to buy him an acoustic electric guitar. And this is kind of what they came back with. And this is one of their flop models. It was a D18E that he used in the MTV Unplugged sessions. And they only made that guitar for like 1 year, but it's never really been a highly collectible or collected guitar. And that's because it came with two de-armand pickups that kind of looked like they were sore thumbs on this thing, and had a modified pick guard, and they just aren't highly regarded guitars. But essentially that's what he was playing during those sessions. And I think the story goes he sent somebody out kind of last minute, and this is kind of what they came back with. And either it had already been heavily modified or he modified it himself. I think he removed one of the pickups or something to that effect. And of course would have had to turn it left-handed. But yeah, just really stupid that, you know, she would lose that guitar that was her father's guitar, and such an iconic one at that.
Before we get married, why don't you sign this prenuptial agreement?
Next bit of news that kind of caught my attention was this bit about Ritchie, Blackmore, talking about Joe Satriani. And talking about generally players who play all the correct notes.
To me, listen to Joe Satriani. He is a brilliant player. But I never really hear him searching for notes. I never hear him playing maybe a wrong note. Jimi Hendrix used to play lots of wrong notes because he was searching all the time. Where the hell is that correct note? And when he did find that right note, wow, that was incredible. But if you're always playing the correct notes, there's something wrong. You're not searching. You're not reaching for anything.
My take on this is I can definitely see where he's coming from. When you learn a song, you should leave room in the song, unless you're playing a piece of classical music from a dead composer, and you're doing it with an ensemble that's so large that if you start to go off in one direction, you are definitely going to throw the orchestra and the conductor and everybody for a loop, and you're going to screw up the performance. You know, stick to the sheet music in that case. You know, if you're playing Beethoven, probably a good idea to stick to the sheet music. You can color it with your dynamics and with your feel, and you can have your own interpretation in the parts that demand interpretation. But you know, for the most part, stick with the sheet music when you're doing music like that. But when you're doing rock and roll, there is a lot of room for interpretation in rock and roll. And if you're merely rehashing all of the same notes that you've done a million times, it really begs the question, why continue to do it? So I get what he's saying here. You know, if you're not searching for new notes, or if you're not trying to take it to the next level, if you're not trying to even deconstruct or decompose yourself and forget things that you know, so your muscle memory can sort of reform in a different way from time to time, then you're kind of missing the point of playing music to begin with, because a lot of the point, for me at least, was the thrill of new discovery, of learning a technique, or learning you know, a little lick, or learning a song for the very first time. And after about the fourth or fifth time that you get it perfect, you know, and you play it for a few friends, or you know, you impress some girls or something for a few times with it, and then you should probably start to move on and find other things to do. So I get what he's saying here. Once you have become so accomplished at playing this one piece of music, you know, maybe try to reach for other notes, or try to make it your own, or make it different. And his criticism seems to be that, you know, players like Joe Satriani are so perfect and so on point with every single note, and you can hear them from one night to the next. And yeah, you know, Joe Satriani's gonna ad lib on a few things, but he's gonna sound pretty much like himself on every single thing. You know, there's gonna be ultra distortion in his tone, and it's going to be balls to the wall to the max pretty much the whole time. I very rarely see him turn down his tone knob on his guitar, you know, bring things down into a pocket, or even play a song that's all acoustic maybe for a change. You know what I mean? It's like, you, as an artist, you should try to search and try to do different things. I mean, how boring would that be to do your G3 tour, or your G10 tour, whatever it is you're going to do, however many guitarists you're going to take along with you on a tour, and play the same old stuff again and again, and put wah pedal on everything. You know, it's almost like listening to a better version of Kirk Hammett every single night, you know, if I'm honest. I'll agree with Ritchie. You know, I'm not criticizing Joe Satriani. I'm not trying to single him out. I'm only doing this because, you know, this is the story. But as far as I'm concerned, players like Joe Satriani don't really inspire me. So I agree with Ritchie Blackmore on this. I'm not inspired listening to Joe Satriani. He doesn't make me want to play like him. He doesn't make me want to sound like him. You know, there are some players who are, I guess, shredders, who do that for me. And I talked about one last week, Brad Gillis. So, you know, I'm not averse to shredding or a little bit of wanking, you know, to fill out your repertoire, so to speak. But when that's all that you seem to be able to do, or that's become your shtick, and people have grown to expect it, and if you were to start doing other things, you might lose audience, that's when you're in a trap. And, you know, I put out a video a long time ago talking about not losing the innocence in your playing, and not losing the innocence in your music listening, you know? Being able to listen to something that's simple, that's simply composed, to be able to sit back in a chair and let a musician or a composer take you on a journey, you know, and start you out slowly, with very modest tones and very modest playing. Sometimes, you know, listen to the opening of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, or listen to the opening of Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here album, for an example. You know, it takes a good 5 minutes or something for the music to really even kick in. And if you were just listening to it for the first time, you might assume, what is this? Is this like Vangelis, or is this Yanni, or, you know what I mean? You might have the impression that this was something that doesn't rock, that you might not want to listen to. But, you know, if you give it a chance and if you let it take you along for a journey, it opens up to you over time, and it's something that on repeated listens continues to open up for you and to take you on different journeys and to introduce different colors upon each listen. That's not true with music like Joe Satriani music. And I think that's partially what's killing the guitar, you know, and at least in the minds of a lot of people, because they associate guitarists and guitar playing with this wank fest, self-indulgent, narcissistic crap that's being put out. And, you know, again, no, I'm not singling out Joe Satriani. Amazing player, technically amazing. He just doesn't inspire me to want to play like him, and it's unfortunate. I can't play most of the shit that, you know, most of the stuff he pulls off. So it's not like I'm saying I'm better than this guy or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of proud to not be better than him in some of those areas, because, like I said, I would rather keep my innocence as a musician and keep the ability to do different things if I wanted to. You know, if I wanted to, I feel like if I wanted to record an album of shred, I could do that. Nothing's going to stop me. I feel like if I wanted to record a album of all folk music, I could do that. Nobody's going to stop me. You know, maybe if you were to really delve into the psyche of people like Joe Satriani, maybe they feel trapped too. I don't know. But Joe, if you're watching this and you do feel trapped, get out. You know, but I would still encourage you to do as Ritchie Blackmore says and search for some different notes. Try some different things. Try to deconstruct your technique a little bit. Forget the technique. Try to find beauty and simplicity for a change, you know? I thought this was an interesting article as well. This is, well, I say interesting, but it's not really an interesting article. It's just an interesting subject, because the article is really just a collection of tweets from these stars that were tweeting back and forth. And when did this happen, actually, now that I think about it? When did it become news to see a bunch of celebrities tweeting back and forth on Twitter? I mean, when did Twitter become news? The only reason I'm citing it is because I think it's something that we should talk about, and it kind of dovetails in with our discussion last week about opiates and opioid crisis, and, you know, doctors who overprescribe things and this and that. This article talks about common ailments for musicians, and I guess specifically common ailments for touring musicians, and even more specifically than that, guitarists. And Nico Case took to Twitter earlier today to discuss a seemingly common ailment among musicians: upper body pain. I think that's a common ailment among people of a certain age. If I'm being honest. I mean, I have upper body pain and I'm not really a touring musician. But yeah, man, you know, if you strap on a Les Paul every night, you know, on a tour, if you're going on a world tour and every other night you've got a 10-pound Les Paul on your back, and it's pulling down your shoulders and twisting your spine in knots, yeah, you're probably going to hurt. That's why it's a good idea to try to get a guitar that's light, and you know, you can hold up and it's not going to compress your shoulders. That's one thing that musicians don't really think about. You know, it's good sometimes to have those, you know, 10-pound Les Pauls, because they do sound good in a stadium sort of setting. You can crank them up and stand in front of your Marshall stack and it's going to ring until Tuesday and sound killer. But the problem is, if you're standing up and you're doing this, you know, every other night, that can become, you know, a pain. No pun intended. But yeah, apparently, you know, she says guitar players seldom talk about arm, shoulder, and neck problems, and it really hurts. And then Jason Isbell kind of popped in and he tweeted that he's had lots of issues with bouncing around in a tour van for hours and hours, and actually it messed up his leg. Some, you know, because you get that restless leg syndrome and it kind of pinches arteries and nerves and things, and when you finally do get out of the van, that's why your legs kind of just thank you. So yeah, let's talk about this for a minute. What are all the ailments that musicians can face? You know, I have carpal tunnel in both wrists, and for me, I have gotten around that. If you guys have seen many of my videos, I've gotten around that by, you know, trying to limit, and this is another reason I don't play like Joe Satriani, because it would probably hurt me at this point physically. But I've gotten around that, you know, by adjusting my picking technique so that I have the You see how my wrist barely moved through all of that. So I don't know how many notes I played there, but my wrist barely moved. So to me, that is a very efficient way of getting from one string to another and from picking. Now, again, it limits me in what I can actually play, and the way in which I have to play is kind of limited when I do that. But to me, it's become my go-to style of playing to pick in this way because I have carpal tunnel. Now, the guitar is not responsible, I don't think, for the carpal tunnel. That was really brought on when I was in IT for several years back in the early 2000s. Going to work every day and holding the mouse like this up on your desk and clicking and walking people through their technical problems over the phone and all this crap. You know, it actually gave me carpal tunnel pretty quickly in this wrist. So I switched hands actually. I became an ambidextrous mouse user as a result of this, and you know, used my left hand for a long time too. So when this one would start hurting, I would switch up and then back and forth. And now I actually have carpal tunnel in this one too. So but it's not as bad. It doesn't hurt me as badly on this hand. Every now and then, if I've been playing for a long time, I can notice it start to hurt and I start to cramp up on my wrist on this hand. So I can't play for long periods of time. If I had to go on a world tour or something, I would probably have to do some serious physical preparation before each show if I was going to do that, because you know, because of simply my carpal tunnel. Now there are other things too that start to hurt after a while. My left shoulder, if I'm standing for a long period of time, and I've got a strap over this left shoulder. Now that's one thing that you can do. You can get wider straps, and I recommend getting like a 2.5, 3 inch wide strap. If you're going to be standing for a long period of time, your best bet is a really wide strap, and as padded as you can get it and as wide as you can get it, because it really needs to spread the load across the shoulder so it's not digging in one spot, and that's going to spread the the weight across the shoulder a little bit better as well. And again, get a lighter guitar. I mean, even this right here, this is a Fender Telecaster, and even this is probably on the heavier side for what I would want to take on a stage night after night. I would probably have to find the lightest guitar I could stand. You know, if I was going to go on a long tour, it would not. I would not sacrifice comfort for style. I'm just not that type. And you also notice I don't do a lot of this downstrokey kind of hard playing either. Like, and when I do, I will usually do something different than what most people do. Most people will pick like this, and I used to, when I was younger, I used to pick in this kind of way. But like if I was doing punk rock or something, you know, I actually find it easier to pick in this manner. And with my thumb kind of out. And I think what that does is it puts my hand in a more relaxed position, and I actually use these two fingers right here to do the picking. But this kind of goes back to what I said a long time ago in my straps video. I was talking about different straps that are designed to relieve, the weight from your shoulders. There are a couple different ones that come around your waist actually and transfer all of the weight to your waist rather than your shoulder, so it frees your shoulders up. The other problem with wearing a really heavy guitar on your shoulder is if you're the singer also of the band, when you have a guitar sitting on your shoulder like this and dragging it down, that also has the effect of preventing you from hitting certain notes, because you need to be able to sing from your diaphragm, and if you can't sing from your diaphragm with this heavy guitar like this, and if you can't get enough air, you know, to hit those notes and let that stuff ring out. You're going to mess up your voice for one, and also it's not doing your shoulder any favor. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you, some of you older players especially, what kind of pains do you experience? How do you get around it? What sort of warm-ups do you do? Do you do finger warm-ups? Do you do shoulder warm-ups? Do you do push-ups, jumping jacks? What do you do before a show? Sound off down in the comments. I'd like to hear about it. The other thing I wanted to talk about this Shitpost Friday is the upgrades I've made to my station here. Some of you probably already have noticed this thing sitting back here. Okay, I'm really proud of this thing. I found this at Goodwill, again, of all places. You guys know how fond I am of shopping at thrift stores. I got this thing for $8, and I brought it home, drilled a hole in my desk here to accommodate it, and I lubricated the hell out of that hole as well. There's Vaseline in it to help this thing swivel, but it's really stable. And what this is it's a light slash magnifying glass, but I have taken the magnifying glass out, and it was real glass. Some of these are kind of cheaply made. This one actually had a real magnifying glass, so I've packed it away for the future. I can reinstall it. But what I've done here is I've taken pieces of plastic and laminated them together for strength and installed those in here. And this has given me a mount for my microscope. So I can move this thing around wherever I want. I can look at whatever I want. Let's see, I can zoom out here if I want to, and I can focus. Or I can come down further and I can look at all the gunk that's on my in key. This is going to be a real cool addition to my station here. And also I've gotten everything up off the desk. You'll probably remember my toolbox was up here on the desk taking up space, so I've moved it all off of there. And this is really going to be cool, because in the future I'll be able to have, you know, different shots ready here. So I can take this thing, I can stick it way up in the air out of my way if I want to. I can swivel it over to the side out of my way if I want. Or I can use it to look at specific parts of an amplifier and look at them in greater detail. There's another upgrade I've made. This is a Shure Beta 87A microphone. This is what you're listening to right now, this Beta 87A, and what I basically do is just point it at the general direction of where I'm going to be sitting. And it's a condenser mic, and it does pick up from the sides as well to some degree, so I think this is going to work out pretty well. It's working out fairly well so far. And I've also added an LED light to my old arm where my camera sits, which is very bright. So whatever I put this over the top of, it's going to light it up even more. And in addition to the really bright lights that I have, this one and this other one's actually over here for this video, I think our lighting situation is much, much better these days. That brings us to this week's Influences segment. And for this week's Influences segment, I wanted to remain with the rock and roll, particularly the 70s rock and roll. And I want to talk about this band, Boston. I have 3 different uncles on my mom's side, and they were all into Boston. One of my uncles in particular, he had a muscle car, I think it was a Mercury, and I don't know what he had in it, but you know, it was one of those that when he stomped down on it, you would sit back in the seat. And it looked awesome, and it felt awesome to ride around in. And whenever he would take me for a ride and I was a little kid, you know, I felt like the center of the universe. You know, I felt like life really just couldn't get any better than this. And this was back in the day too, when you didn't have to spend an arm and a leg to cruise around your town. You know, basically this was a small town, and what you would do is you would cruise out to one end of town and you would turn around and you would cruise back the other way. And you know, there was a little restaurant there called the 88 Dip where everybody would kind of gather, and you know, you would pull in there every now and then, get ice cream or get something to eat, and you would just continue out to the other end of town and turn around again. And this was your little cruise, and you would do this on a Saturday night. Well, my uncle would take me along with him, and he would play this album. If this band never did anything else, besides the first 2 tracks on this album, More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind, they would be set, in my mind. They would be set, right up there in the pantheon of great musicians. But this wasn't even a real band. They actually had to fool the record company into believing that they were a real band to get signed. And then I think they added some other guys after the fact so they could, play this stuff live. But yeah, this is Tom Scholz's brainchild, and Brad Delp with his voice is just, honestly I think Brad Delp's vocals, he has the most angelic male vocal in rock and roll, and I would put him at probably #1 rock and roll vocalist of all time. And no discussion of Boston would really be complete without a short discussion, at least, on Tom Scholz's lead guitar playing. If an alien visited Earth and I had to use only words to describe Tom Scholz's lead guitar playing, I would describe it as the sound equivalent of a phoenix rising above the burning ashes of all of the wistful, poetic dreams that you've ever had. He plays notes that soar into the stratosphere. If you listen to the ending solo in Peace of Mind, especially whenever the dual leads kick in, it's pure musical bliss. In the same way that Beethoven Piano Concerto to me is pure bliss. It's perfection. Not a single note is out of place. This is one of the few albums that I would also describe as not having a single solitary note out of place, ill-advised, or unnecessary. Every single note of this album is necessary. Every single note is immediate. All of the playing is completely in the pocket. It sits exactly where it needs to sit in the mix, and that's down to Tom Scholz's production. It is a work of musical genius. If you don't know of this band, first of all, where have you been? Second of all, go and get this album immediately. So that concludes our influences segment on Boston. Alright, that brings us to the guitar of the week, and this week's guitar of the week is my 1989 Charvel 750 XL. The 750 XL was the top of the line Japanese made Charvel, made in 1989. They only made it for about 1 year, from between 1989 and 1990. Then it was replaced by the Jackson Professional Soloist. So you can see in these photographs my 1989 Charvel alongside its 1990 Jackson Soloist Professional equivalent. There were some differences between these two models. The Jackson had an ebony fretboard, whereas the Charvel had a rosewood. Also, the Charvel guitar was a lot thicker. You can see right here the difference in thickness. Also, the Jackson had a 3-way toggle switch, whereas the Charvel had a Super Strat 5-way toggle with splittable single-coil pickups. This is also around the time when they started putting the Charvel toothpaste logos on the headstocks, which I prefer, honestly. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the fact that this was the first Charvel I ever owned and I just got partial to it. But I prefer this logo to the other logo with the guitar. Frets on these are jumbo size frets. Real nice fretboard on this. It's probably dirty and grimy at this point. I can't believe that the frets have held up as well as they have, because man, I've played the literal shit out of this thing, and it doesn't have much in the way of fret wear, so really good wearing frets. You can always tell guitarists' patterns by where on the fretboard they play and don't play, and you can tell most guitarists are like this too. They don't play on these low notes on the upper frets, so you always end up getting these more tarnished, more grimy upper frets. Hell, it looks like I don't play very much above about the 15th fret anyway. I walked into ABBA's Music in Henderson, Kentucky when I was, I guess, just about to turn 16. And my mom bought this guitar for, I believe, $700 at the time, which was a lot of money, really. But this was something I just fell absolutely in love with because of the top mainly. This amber flame maple top is absolutely gorgeous. And not only do you have flames going, you know, this way, but you can see the maple grain running the opposite direction as well. Just a beautiful, beautiful piece of wood. And these little bevels here in the horns, these are a nice touch here as well. It doesn't really improve your reach much, but it's just a nice little feature. It looks nice. These screws right here are larger, if you'll notice, than these screws. These are the original ones, height adjustment screws. These I put in because my original screws either stripped, or I think the screw holes on the pickup had stripped. These are the original pickups, but I took the covers off of them. They had black plastic covers that were labeled Jackson, and these are overwound Jackson pickups, and they sound really nice. They are not active, which I also like about it. This is a Jackson labeled bridge, but it's actually made by Schaller in Germany. Very well made bridge. Nice Floyd Rose licensed tremolo system with the fine tuners. Also like this bridge because the way in which they do the arms on these, they have this collar that you screw in to these. There's a couple different bridges, and I actually had to fix this at one point. I had to add this piece, this little pin, because it had fallen out at one point. There's a little pin here that holds a little washer in place so that when this collar is down, you know, none of it falls apart. And also that pin needs to be thick enough so that when you screw this in, that the bar will stay put where you leave it. So if you tighten this up enough, you know, the bar won't fall on you. So if you want to position this thing over the strings like this, you can, and it's not going to just fall down and dangle. I hate that. When you let go of the bar, I want to let go of it and have it stay where I put it. You know, if I want it here, so I can do the Brad Gillis stuff. The back of this guitar, and this thing weighs probably, I don't even know what it weighs, but it's got to weigh close to 10 pounds. I mean, I've never put it on a scale. I probably should, shouldn't I? I would be very interested to see what it actually does weigh. But look at the thickness of this thing. I mean, this thing is a chunk. And it's mahogany on the back. Big, thick chunk of mahogany. And that's one piece. It's not a sandwich body or anything like that. This is real deal lutherie here. This, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably the best Japanese-made guitar of the 1980s. I mean, I can say that in all seriousness with a straight face, because this is an incredible guitar. If you were to pick this thing up, you would know exactly what I mean. But you can see it's a set-through neck, so it's set, and then they have finished it as if it was a neck through. I rock only 2 springs on this, at least for right now. It seems to be about right for the gauge of strings that I have on there. We've got a deep cut for the belly here, which makes it comfortable to play. Even in spite of its thickness, it's got a real deep cut, which helps. The only thing I think I guess they could have done better, but I kind of like this. I kind of like the fact that they did not do binding on this, so you can actually see the you know, where the wood changes from the cap to the back. They haven't tried to hide that. They've simply finished it differently, which I've always kind of thought was neat. It does give you these little, you know, awkward areas where you can see all the different pieces of wood and stuff, but that's kind of neat because you can see how it's put together. You do have binding on the neck, however. This is a very thin neck. This is a shredder neck for sure. And if I had my druthers these days, I would probably ask for a thicker neck. That's why I really don't play this one a whole lot these days, because it's a little thinner than I'd like to play. Because of my carpal tunnel that I've developed in recent years, this one tends to hurt after a little while. We've got Jackson labeled tuners. Those are probably Gotos. Another nice touch I always thought was cool on these Charvels is they gave you a little thing to hold your hardware, to hold your couple of hex keys. You can hold a smaller one for your bridge adjustments, and this one here for your for loosening your nut. It's nice to have this on the guitar because you can never find those, it seems like, when you're out of practice. Most people have chipped the tips of their pointy guitars. I have not chipped this one, luckily. It looks like I tried to sometime and didn't succeed. But the one ding that was put on this was put on here by my bass player, good friend of mine. Bless his heart, he didn't mean to do it, but I was pissed. I've got this, I've got this lovely guitar. He's just lucky he didn't do it on the front, because I probably would have punched him in the face. So that's the only real flaw on this thing. I've taken really good care of it over the years. The other thing I did too, though, I had a I don't know if you're going to be able to see this in the light, but I had a DiMarzio strap, one of the locking straps, and those locking straps, you kind of, to put it in the case with those straps attached, you kind of had to put them up against the guitar, or put them on the top. I wasn't about to put them on the top and scratch up the top, so I kind of laid them against the sides, and you can see a little bit of finish wear right there. That'll buff out, but if I had left that too much and traveled with this guitar a lot, that probably would have worn a hole right here in this part, and also back here. There's some, yeah, you can see it right there. See just the dullness and the little scratches in this finish right there in that area. That's from having a DiMarzio locking strap on this thing. This thing does have a scarf joint right here, and scarf joints are if you're going to have a tilt back headstock like this one is, somewhat tilted back. It's not as extreme as a Les Paul, but it does have a tilt back to it. And if you're going to build a guitar like this with a tilt back, a scarf joint is a good construction method to kind of strengthen this area, because you have two laminated pieces of wood right here where it's basically the weakest. But yeah, killer guitar. I've loved this thing. I got this guitar in lieu of a car for my 16th birthday. Like I said, we walked into the music store and this is the one I wanted. I was the first owner of this guitar, but he had had it in the store for a long time. So I wasn't 16 years old in 1989, but when I was 16 years old, this guitar was still new old stock. So, it was an expensive guitar, I think, even for the time. It was the top of the line, and it was just an odd guitar to try to sell, a very high-end Charvel, in a place where a lot of people were coming in looking for Fenders. So yeah, that's my 1989 Charvel 750 XL. I think the most visible player of these guitars was Shawn Lane. He was, a shredder, another one of those who died young. Another thing I forgot to point out about this is real mother of pearl inlays. This is not like plastic or anything like that. These are real mother of pearl. And also they are reversed. The thick part of the shark fin is up here on the top as opposed to the bottom. That's something unique to this model guitar. Okay, so that concludes this week's Shitpost Friday. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit subscribe down below. Also hit the bell to receive all notifications. If you don't, you're just gonna be fucked. I don't know why I said that.